Dillon Danis might just be one of the brightest prospects in the world of MMA. The Bellator fighter has an undefeated professional record, and even some of his fights before he went professional still stand out as classics. Today, we'll be counting down some of Dillon's best submissions from best to worst, along with some other related news. So, let's dive in. At number 5, we have Dillon's pro debut at Bellator 198. In this fight, Dillon took on Kyle Walker, an MMA fighter with an okay record. Kyle had 2 wins and 3 losses leading up to this fight, but Dillon was someone with no professional experience to speak of, so Kyle was still the favorite to win. After all, he was the one with the experience, the history with MMA, and perhaps even the skill to win this fight. At the beginning of the fight, it almost seemed as if Kyle was gonna dominate. He was hitting punches left and right, but as soon as Dillon managed to grab hold of Kyle, it was done. He seamlessly transitioned from a grapple to a submission, and before we knew it, Kyle was completely out of it. It was a hell of a debut on Dillon's part, and it cemented him as someone who's definitely going to be around the MMA world for a while. However, it was only his first pro fight, so there's a lot more than just that. In 4th place, we have Dillon's iconic fight against Max Humphrey at Bellator 222. Max Humphrey and Dillon Danis are pretty much rivals that go way back. Back in their amateur days, both of these men used to fight each other, and in 2019, they finally got the opportunity to show off their skills and rivalry on the world stage in Bellator 222. Max made his pro MMA debut a few years before Dillon did, and during that time, he racked up a record of 3 wins and 2 losses. This is a pretty respectable record, but was Dillon gonna make it worse? Well, you already know the answer. As soon as the fight started, it became clear what was going to happen next. Dillon first made an attempt at a low single, but narrowly missed Max. However, with his second attempt, he was successful and managed to get Max up against the cage. He followed this off by giving Max a pounding of a lifetime, but this was only to weaken him. After the pounding fest was over, Dillon quickly grabbed Max's arm and locked it into an armbar, causing him to submit in the most humiliating fashion. This was only Dillon's second pro fight in MMA, but it gave us a perfect example of what kind of fighter Dillon is. He isn't a one-trick pony. He can land punches and pound on opponents when he wants, but his finish is always the same. At number 3, Dillon Danis versus Max Humphrey 2016. As it turns out, Dillon's pro fight against Max Humphrey wasn't even his best submission against him. The thing is, some of Dillon's best performances have been when he was an amateur, which isn't really surprising considering he has only had 2 pro fights thus far. That's why number 3 on our list is Dillon's impressive submission against Max Humphrey in 2016. For much of this fight, Dillon wasn't exactly dominating. It seemed like Max was in full control, and he was even able to land more than a few punches. However, as Dillon was on the ground all by himself, Max knew he was in trouble. He tried to hesitantly sneak in a few punches, knowing what kind of trouble he would be in if Dillon caught him, but it was already too late. As soon as he got even a little close to Dillon, he was grabbed by the full force of his body. Eventually, he was forced to submit in a humiliating manner. It seems like Dillon really has a thing for humiliating Max Humphrey. This fight is pretty cool, since most people haven't even seen it, but it gives you an idea of just how dangerous he can be, even when he's losing a fight. At number 2, we have another fight that you probably haven't seen yet. It's Dillon's fight against Josh Hinger in 2016. Much like Dillon, Josh is also a specialist when it comes to submissions. He can make practically every opponent you can think of tap out, and his fighting style is extremely similar to that of Dillon, making him a formidable opponent. But this ended up being a fight that was pretty much over before it even began. Dillon managed to outclass Josh in almost every way, and he was firmly in control of the whole fight. Eventually, he managed to completely lock Hinger up, and the rest was history. This fight is important because it shows us just how dominating Dillon can be. It's certainly something his future opponents need need to watch over and over again and study his moves with. And finally, number 1, Dillon Danis versus Joe Lauzon 2015. Another one from Dillon's amateur days, his fight against Joe Lauzon is considered a classic by his fans. The finishing submission that he applied on Lauzon is nothing short of amazing in this fight. It was a devastating toe hold that nearly sucked the life out of Lauzon. You can clearly see the pain and panic of Lauzon's face as Dillon applies more and more pressure to the hold. To Lauzon's credit, he tried his damned hardest to get out of the hold despite how painful it might have been. He has to be one of the hardest guys to submit out there. In fact, he even managed to release the hold on more than a few occasions. But alas, no matter how many times he escaped, Dillon always found a way to grab him once again. This is the kind of submission that's just brutal to look at. In the end, Lauzon was forced to submit, but at least all of us got an instant classic fight out of the whole ordeal. Now let's take a look at some more news regarding Dillon Danis. First, Logan Paul and Dillon Danis agreed to a boxing match. For the most part, Dillon Danis has never really received any sort of mainstream attention from the press or by MMA fans. However, all of that is set to change now that one of the most headline-grabbing boxers in the world has agreed to fight Dillon for a boxing match. That's right, we're talking about Logan Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer turned wrestler. Now, Logan Paul isn't exactly the most respected name in boxing or MMA, but when it comes to mainstream attention, it's pretty much impossible to beat. The thing is, for most of his professional career, Logan Paul has faced people who were washed up and easy to beat. In comparison, Dillon Danis is a breath of fresh air. However, it's important to note that Dillon is also a submission specialist, and when it comes to boxing, there's very little use for that. So it's really hard to predict how this fight is gonna go. Is Dillon gonna defeat Logan based on the sheer experience alone, or is Logan gonna defeat Dillon because he's gonna be out of his comfort zone? It's impossible to tell right now, so we'll just have to wait and see. Up next, Logan Paul gives Dillon Danis a warning. Logan Paul recently appeared on the True Geordie podcast, and as everyone expected, the topic of his upcoming fight against Dillon Danis came up. When talking about Dillon, Logan Paul held absolutely no punches. He said that he's going to pull Dillon apart and tear him to pieces. He said that everyone is going to love seeing what he's gonna do to Dillon. He described Dillon as the gum that sticks to the bottom of your shoe, claiming that everyone hates him. He called Dillon an attention seeker and said that he is finally going to shut him up once he's done with him in the ring. Now, it's very much possible that Logan Paul is just playing it up to hype up his match, but there seems to be some real hatred behind his words. Who knows? Maybe he'll come to regret them. Coming up, Dillon says he wants to face Andrew Tate. Now that he's gotten a little bit of clout thanks to Logan Paul, Dillon Danis feels confident enough to send out new challenges as well. He recently called out Andrew Tate, the former kickboxer who has been banned on just about every platform out there. He said that he wants to fight Andrew Tate, and he'll beat him up so hard that Tate will turn into a feminist. If you know anything about Andrew Tate at all, you'll know exactly why that's such a hilarious call out. However, the fan response to this tweet wasn't exactly great. Many people pointed out that Dillon was, once again, seeking attention. All MMA fighters do it in one way or another, so it's only fair that Dillon gets to do it as well, right? That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Dillon can make it in the UFC? Let us know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.